The crystalline spires of Ardaria's capital gleamed in the light of twin suns, their iridescent surfaces reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors across the bustling cityscape. Princess Selena stood at the apex of the tallest tower, her lithe form silhouetted against the backdrop of a violet sky. Her emerald eyes scanned the horizon, taking in the majesty of her homeworld one last time before her impending diplomatic mission. The door behind her hissed open. Selena didn't turn, recognizing the precise, measured footsteps of her aide, Zira. "Your Highness," Zira's voice was crisp, devoid of unnecessary emotion. "The council awaits your final briefing." Selena nodded, her platinum hair shimmering as she moved. "Very well. Let us not keep them waiting." As they strode through the palace corridors, Selena felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Ardarian nobles bowed deeply as she passed, their faces masks of reverence and fear. The princess held her chin high, her posture perfect, every inch the regal air they expected. The council chambers loomed before them, a cavernous room of polished obsidian and pulsing bioluminescent veins. As Selena entered, the assembled dignitaries rose in unison, a sea of elaborately robed figures. High Counselor Thorn, his weathered face etched with lines of wisdom and cunning, addressed her. "Princess Selena, you stand on the precipice of history. The negotiations with the Zyraxian Empire will shape the future of our galaxy for millennia to come." Selena met his gaze unflinchingly. "I am well aware of the stakes, Counselor. The Ardarian bloodline has prepared for this moment for generations." A younger man stepped forward, his features bearing a familial resemblance to Selena. This was Darius, her cousin and closest living relative. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he spoke. "Cousin, we have the utmost faith in your abilities, but perhaps a final review of the classified intelligence reports would be prudent?" Something in his tone set Selena's nerves on edge, but she maintained her composure. "Of course, Darius, lead the way." As they exited the chamber, Selena felt a shift in the air. The corridor seemed eerily deserted. She turned to question Darius, only to find herself staring down the barrel of a disruptor pistol. "I'm truly sorry it has come to this, cousin," Darius said, his voice cold. "But Ardaria needs a stronger hand to guide it." Selena's mind raced, assessing options. "You fool," she hissed. "This treachery will tear our world apart." Darius's finger tightened on the trigger. "Perhaps, but I'll be the one to put it back together." A searing pain erupted in Selena's side as the disruptor blast struck her. She stumbled, her vision blurring. Through the haze, she saw palace guards approaching, not to help, but to aid in Darius's coup. With her last reserves of strength, Selena activated the emergency teleporter concealed in her bracelet. The world dissolved around her in a shimmer of light. She materialized in a deserted hangar, alarms blaring in the distance. Clutching her wounded side, Selena stumbled towards the nearest ship, a small, nondescript courier vessel. As she dragged herself into the cockpit, her royal training kicked in. Within moments, she had bypassed the security protocols and initiated the launch sequence. The ship rocketed into the atmosphere, pursued by sleek Ardarian fighters. Selena's fingers danced across the controls, pushing the engines beyond their limits. As the blackness of space enveloped her, she punched in a series of random hyperspace coordinates. "Your Highness!" A familiar voice crackled over the comm system. It was Zira, her tone urgent. "What's happening?" "The palace is in chaos." Selena gritted her teeth against the pain. "Darius, Coop, I've been shot." "By the ancestors," Zira breathed. "Where are you going? I can scramble a rescue team." "No," Selena interrupted. "It's not safe. I don't know who to trust. I'll find a way to contact you when I can." With that, she severed the communication link and engaged the hyperdrive. The stars elongated into streaks of light, and Ardaria vanished behind her. Days blurred together as Selena drifted through space, her wound festering despite her best efforts to treat it. The ship's meager medical supplies were quickly depleted. Fever set in, clouding her thoughts. When the navigation system finally alerted her to their arrival, Selena could barely focus on the readouts. An unnamed planet loomed before her, its surface a patchwork of harsh deserts and jagged mountain ranges. It was far from ideal, but she had no choice. The ship plummeted through the atmosphere, systems failing as it was never designed for planetary entry. Selena braced herself for impact, her last conscious thought a prayer to the ancestors she'd never particularly believed in. The crash landing was violent, leaving a kilometer-long furrow of scorched earth and twisted metal. Selena dragged herself from the wreckage, every movement agony. The planet's oppressive heat bore down on her as she stumbled away from the crash site, knowing that staying put would mean certain death if Darius's forces managed to track her. For days, she trudged across the barren landscape, rationing the few supplies she'd salvaged. Her once immaculate robes were tattered and stained with blood and dust. The haughty princess was reduced to a desperate survivor, clinging to life through sheer force of will. On the fifth day, as Selena huddled in the meager shade of a rock formation, she heard an impossible sound, the roar of engines. She peered out, hardly daring to hope, and saw a ship descending from the sky. It was unlike any vessel she'd ever encountered, clearly of alien design. The craft touched down less than 100 meters away. Selena's first instinct was to hide, but she knew this might be her only chance at rescue. Summoning her last reserves of strength, she staggered toward the ship. A hatch opened, and a figure emerged. Selena's eyes widened in shock. The being before her was unmistakably human, a species she'd only read about in historical texts. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with close-cropped dark hair and a rugged face that spoke of years of hard living. The human's eyes locked onto her, surprise evident in his expression. He called out in a language her universal translator struggled to process. "Hey, you all right? What the hell are you doing out here?" Selena drew herself up, trying to project an air of authority despite her battered state. "I am Princess Selena of Ardaria. You will assist me immediately." The man's eyebrows shot up, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well, excuse me, Your Highness. Didn't realize I'd stumbled onto the Royal Desert Resort?" Indignation flared in Selena's chest. How dare this primitive creature mock her? She opened her mouth to deliver a scathing retort, but the words never came. The toll of her ordeal finally caught up with her, and she collapsed into unconsciousness. When Selena awoke, she found herself in an unfamiliar environment. The air hummed with the sound of machinery, and the antiseptic smell of a medical bay filled her nostrils. She was lying on a cot, her wounds cleaned and bandaged. The human male entered her field of vision, carrying a bottle of water. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Princess. You gave me quite a scare there." Selena struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain in her side. "Where am I? Who are you?" He handed her the water, which she reluctantly accepted. "Name's Kane. Former Earth Alliance soldier, current freelance trader, and all-around galactic drifter. And you're aboard my ship, the Stargazer." Selena took a tentative sip of water, her parched throat crying out for more. She fought to maintain her composure. "I appreciate your assistance, but I must insist you return me to Ardarian space immediately." Kane leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Yeah, about that. Your ship's nav computer was pretty fried, but I managed to piece together some of your flight path. Looks like you came a long way to get here, and in a big hurry. Now, I'm just a simple human, but that doesn't exactly scream everything's peachy back home." Selena's eyes narrowed. "My affairs are none of your concern." "Fair enough," Kane shrugged. "But considering I just saved your royal backside from becoming vulture food, I think I've earned a little curiosity. Not every day you find an alien princess half dead in the middle of nowhere." "I am not some object of fascination for your amusement," Selena snapped. "I demand you cease this impertinent questioning at once." Kane's smirk widened. "Demand all you want, sweetheart. Out here, light years from anywhere, royal decrees don't mean much. Now you want to tell me what's really going on, or should I just drop you off at the nearest Ardarian embassy?" Selena felt a flicker of fear at the mention of Ardarian authorities. She tried to mask it, but Kane's keen eyes caught the momentary lapse. "Ah," he said softly. "So it's like that, is it? Running from your own people?" "You understand nothing," Selena hissed, frustration and exhaustion breaking through her regal facade. "My cousin, he betrayed me, Tried to kill me. I can't trust anyone. Kane's expression softened slightly. Well, that's a hell of a thing. Look, I'm not looking to get caught up in any intergalactic political intrigue, but I'm also not about to throw you to the wolves. How about we start with you getting some real rest, and we'll figure out the next move when you're not on death's doorstep. Selena wanted to argue, to reassert her authority, but the truth was she had no leverage here. She was entirely at the mercy of this infuriating human. Very well, she said stiffly. I suppose I have little choice but to accept your hospitality. Kane chuckled. There's that royal charm. Get some sleep, princess. We'll see if we can't find a way to get that tiara back on your head. As he turned to leave, Selena called out, her voice softer than she intended. Kane, thank you. He paused at the doorway, glancing back with a crooked smile. Don't mention it. Us outcasts have to stick together, right? With that, he was gone, leaving Selena alone with her thoughts. She sank back onto the cot, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. In the span of days, she'd lost everything. Her home, her status, her very identity. And now her fate was entwined with that of a roguish human who seemed to delight in needling her. As sleep began to claim her, Selena couldn't shake the feeling that her life had irrevocably changed. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The harsh light of twin suns filtered through the stargazer's viewports, casting long shadows across the ship's medbay. Selena stirred, her emerald eyes fluttering open as consciousness returned. The events of the past few days crashed over her like a tidal wave, and she sat up with a gasp, immediately regretting the sudden movement as pain lanced through her side. Whoa there, Your Highness, Kane's voice came from nearby. Take it easy. You're not exactly in fighting shape yet. Selena turned to see the human lounging in a chair beside her bed, his feet propped up on a nearby console. He held a steaming mug in one hand and offered her a lopsided grin. How long have I been unconscious? Selena demanded, her voice hoarse. Kane shrugged. About 36 standard hours. You were pretty out of it. Fever, delirium, the works. Kept muttering something about ancestral betrayal and galactic destiny. Real cheery stuff. Selena felt heat rise to her cheeks, mortified at the thought of appearing so vulnerable. She struggled to regain her composure. I see, and I suppose you've been monitoring me this entire time? Don't flatter yourself, princess, Kane chuckled. I've got better things to do than watch you toss and turn. But someone had to change your bandages and make sure you didn't kick the bucket. As if on cue, Selena became acutely aware of the fresh dressings on her wound. The realization that this human had tended to her while she was helpless sent a confusing mix of emotions through her. Gratitude, embarrassment, and a strange fluttering sensation she couldn't quite place. I appreciate your efforts, she said stiffly, though I'm certain the medical facilities on Ardaria would have been far superior. Kane's eyebrows shot up. Is that your way of saying thank you? Because if so, your diplomatic skills could use some work. Selena bristled. I'll have you know that I am highly trained in the art of galactic diplomacy. My words have brokered peace between warring star systems. Uh-huh, Kane nodded, clearly unconvinced. And how's that working out for you now? Last I checked, you were public enemy number 1 back home. The barb struck deeper than Selena cared to admit. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. You know nothing of my situation. Kane's expression softened slightly. He set down his mug and leaned forward. You're right, I don't. But I'm guessing it's a hell of a lot more complicated than you're letting on. Look, I'm not asking for your life story, but if we're going to figure out how to keep you alive, and maybe even get you back on that fancy throne of yours, I need to know what we're up against. Selena met his gaze, searching for any sign of deception. To her surprise, she found only genuine concern mixed with a hint of curiosity. She sighed, realizing she had little choice but to trust this infuriating human, at least for now. Very well, she conceded, but first I require sustenance and assistance in freshening up. Kane grinned. Now that's a royal command I can get behind. Let's get you cleaned up and fed, then we'll talk strategy. Over the next hour, Kane helped Selena to the ship's small washroom, provided her with clean clothing, a set of his own garments that hung comically large on her slender frame. and prepared a simple meal of rehydrated protein packs and synthesized fruit. As Selena picked at the unfamiliar food, she found herself studying Kane more closely. His movements were efficient and purposeful, speaking to years of military training. Yet there was an ease to his manner, a roguish charm that seemed at odds with the discipline of a soldier. "You said you were in the Earth Alliance," Selena ventured. "What made you leave?" Kane paused, a shadow passing over his features. "Let's just say I saw enough of war to last several lifetimes. Decided I'd rather explore the galaxy than fight over it." Selena nodded, understanding all too well the toll of conflict. "And now you're what did you call it? A freelance trader?" "Among other things," Kane winked. "Courier, explorer, occasional rescuer of wayward royalty. I go where the credits are good and the company's interesting." "How terribly noble," Selena said dryly. Kane laughed. "Says the princess on the run. Face it, Your Highness, we're both a long way from where we started." As they continued to talk, Selena found herself relaxing, despite her best efforts to maintain a royal distance. Kane's irreverent humor and genuine interest in her story slowly chipped away at her defenses. She told him of the coup, of Darius's betrayal, and of the ancient Ardarian power that her bloodline was said to possess. "Wait, hold up," Kane interrupted. "You're telling me you've got some kind of space magic that can unite the galaxy, and that's why your cousin tried to off you?" Selena frowned. "It's not space magic. It's a highly sophisticated energy manipulation ability passed down through generations of—" Yeah, sounds like space magic to me," Kane grinned. "So can you, I don't know, shoot lightning from your fingertips or something?" "Don't be absurd," Selena huffed. "The power is said to manifest in ways beyond simple physical displays. It's about influencing the very fabric of reality, bending probability itself to—" She was cut off by a sudden blaring of alarms. Kane leapt to his feet, all traces of humor vanishing from his face. "We've got company," he growled, rushing to the cockpit. Selena followed, her heart racing. Through the view screen, she saw a sleek Ardarian warship dropping out of hyperspace. "How did they find us?" she gasped. Kane's fingers flew over the controls. "Don't know. Don't care. Right now, we need to focus on not getting blown to atoms. Can you fly?" Selena blinked. Yes, but—" "Good," Kane cut her off. "Take the helm. I'll man the weapon systems." Before Selena could protest, Kane was already sliding into the gunner's chair. She hesitated for only a moment before taking the pilot's seat, her royal training kicking in as she assessed the ship's unfamiliar controls. "Uh-huh," Kane nodded, clearly unconvinced. "And how's that working out for you now?" "Last I checked, you were public enemy #1 back home." The barb struck deeper than Selena cared to admit. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know nothing of my situation?" Kane's expression softened slightly. He set down his mug and leaned forward. "You're right, I don't. But I'm guessing it's a hell of a lot more complicated than you're letting on. Look, I'm not asking for your life story, but if we're going to figure out how to keep you alive, and maybe even get you back on that fancy throne of yours, I need to know what we're up against." Selena met his gaze, searching for any sign of deception. To her surprise, she found only genuine concern mixed with a hint of curiosity. She sighed, realizing she had little choice but to trust this infuriating human, at least for now. "Very well," she conceded, "but first I require sustenance and assistance in freshening up." Kane grinned. "Now that's a royal command I can get behind. Let's get you cleaned up and fed. Then we'll talk strategy." Over the next hour, Kane helped Selena to the ship's small washroom, provided her with clean clothing, a set of his own garments that hung comically large on her slender frame, and prepared a simple meal of rehydrated protein packs and synthesized fruit. As Selena picked at the unfamiliar food, she found herself studying Kane more closely. His movements were efficient and purposeful, speaking to years of military training. Yet there was an ease to his manner, a roguish charm that seemed at odds with the discipline of a soldier. "You said you were in the Earth Alliance," Selena ventured. "What made you leave?" Kane paused, a shadow passing over his features. "Let's just say I saw enough of war to last several lifetimes. Decided I'd rather explore the galaxy than fight over it." Selena nodded, understanding all too well the toll of conflict. And now you're what did you call it? A freelance trader? Among other things, Kane winked. Courier, explorer, occasional rescuer of wayward royalty. I go where the credits are good and the company's interesting. How terribly noble, Selena said dryly. Kane laughed. Says the princess on the run. Face it, Your Highness, we're both a long way from where we started. As they continued to talk, Selena found herself relaxing despite her best efforts to maintain a royal distance. Kane's irreverent humor and genuine interest in her story slowly chipped away at her defenses. She told him of the coup, of Darius's betrayal, and of the ancient Ardarian power that her bloodline was said to possess. Wait, hold up, Kane interrupted. You're telling me you've got some kind of space magic that can unite the galaxy, and that's why your cousin tried to off you? Selena frowned. It's not space magic. It's a highly sophisticated energy manipulation ability passed down through generations of... Yeah, sounds like space magic to me, Kane grinned. So can you, I don't know, shoot lightning from your fingertips or something? Don't be absurd, Selena huffed. The power is said to manifest in ways beyond simple physical displays. It's about influencing the very fabric of reality, bending probability itself to... She was cut off by a sudden blaring of alarms. Kane leapt to his feet, all traces of humor vanishing from his face. We've got company, he growled, rushing to the cockpit. Selena followed, her heart racing. Through the view screen, she saw a sleek Ardarian warship dropping out of hyperspace. How did they find us? She gasped. Kane's fingers flew over the controls. Don't know. Don't care. Right now, we need to focus on not getting blown to atoms. Can you fly? Selena blinked. Yes, but... Good, Kane cut her off. Take the helm. I'll man the weapon systems. Before Selena could protest, Kane was already sliding into the gunner's chair. She hesitated for only a moment before taking the pilot's seat, her royal training kicking in as she assessed the ship's unfamiliar controls. The Ardarian vessel opened fire, energy bolts streaking past the Stargazer's hull. Selena's hands moved almost of their own accord, sending the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers that would have made her flight instructors proud. Nice flying, Princess, Kane called out as he returned fire. Now let's see if we can lose them in that asteroid field. Selena's eyes widened. You can't be serious. The navigational calculations required to safely traverse... No time for calculations, Kane interrupted. Sometimes you've got to trust your instincts. Now punch it. Against her better judgment, Selena complied. The Stargazer rocketed into the dense field of space debris, narrowly avoiding collisions as Selena wove through the chaos. Behind them, the larger Ardarian ship struggled to keep pace, its bulky frame ill-suited for such precise maneuvering. We've got another problem, Kane shouted over the whine of straining engines. That last hit took out our hyperdrive motivator. We're not going anywhere fast until I can fix it. Selena's mind raced. There! She pointed to a massive, hollowed-out asteroid. We can hide in there and effect repairs. Kane nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Let's just hope our friends out there don't decide to play hide-and-seek. As they brought the Stargazer to rest within the asteroid's cavernous interior, Selena felt a rush of exhilaration unlike anything she'd experienced before. Her hands trembled slightly as she powered down the engines, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Kane appeared at her side, his face flushed with excitement. Not bad for a princess, he grinned. Didn't know you had it in you. Selena found herself returning his smile, caught up in the moment. There's a great deal you don't know about me. I'm starting to see that, Kane's voice softened, his eyes locked on hers. For a heartbeat, the air between them seemed to crackle with an energy Selena couldn't quite define. The moment was shattered by another alarm. Kane cursed, checking the readouts. They're scanning the asteroid field. Won't be long before they find us. I need to get that hyperdrive online. Think you can keep an eye on our friends out there while I work? Selena nodded, pushing aside the confusing emotions swirling within her. I am more than capable of monitoring their movements. Never doubted it for a second, Your Highness. Kane winked as he disappeared into the engine room. Left alone in the cockpit, Selena found her thoughts drifting. The easy camaraderie she'd fallen into with Kane was unlike anything she'd experienced on Arteria. There, every interaction was laden with protocol and hidden agendas. But here, millions of light years from home, she felt a freedom she'd never known. As she tracked the movements of the Ardarian ship, Selena began to question everything she'd been taught about her role in the galaxy. The weight of her bloodline, the expectations of her people, it all seemed so distant now, eclipsed by the immediate struggle for survival. Hours passed as Kane worked to repair the hyperdrive. Selena split her attention between the sensors and the engine room, where she could hear Kane's muffled curses and the clang of tools. Despite the danger of their situation, she found herself smiling at his colorful language. Finally, Kane emerged, his face streaked with grease and sweat. "It's not pretty, but it should get us out of here. How are we looking?" Selena's face fell. "Not good. They've begun a systematic sweep of the asteroid field. By my calculations, they'll reach our position in approximately 20 minutes. Kane's jaw clenched, cutting it close. "All right, we've got one shot at this. We'll power up at the last possible second and make a run for it. With any luck, we'll be in hyperspace before they can get a target lock." "And if we're not lucky?" Selena asked, already knowing the answer. Kane's grin was fierce. "Then we go out in a blaze of glory. But hey, at least you'll have some company on your way to the great beyond." Selena felt a pang in her chest at his words. The thought of Kane sacrificing himself for her, a stranger, an alien, was both confusing and oddly touching. As they waited for the critical moment, an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Selena struggled to find the right words to express the tumult of emotions within her. "Kane," she began hesitantly, I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done. If we don't survive this—" "Save it, princess," Kane cut her off, his voice gruff. "We're not dead yet, and when we make it out of this mess, you can thank me by buying the drinks. I know a great little cantina on Omega Prime that makes a mean supernova slammer." Selena blinked, taken aback by his refusal to accept her gratitude. But as she studied his face, she realized it wasn't rejection. It was hope. Kane truly believed they would survive, and in that moment, Selena found herself sharing that belief. "Very well," she said, a hint of her royal haughtiness returning. "But I warn you, my tolerance for alien intoxicants is legendary among my people." Kane's eyebrows shot up. "Is that a challenge, Your Highness? Because let me tell you, I've drunk Andorian ale with Klingon warriors and lived to tell the tale." Before Selena could respond, the proximity alarm blared. The Ardarian ship had found them. "Showtime," Kane growled, sliding into the pilot's seat. "Hold on to your tiara, princess. This is going to get bumpy." As the stargazer roared to life and shot out of the asteroid, Selena gripped her seat, her heart pounding. Energy bolts streaked past them as Kane pushed the ship to its limits, juking and weaving through the debris field. "Come on, baby," Kane muttered, his hands flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds." The hyperdrive whined, building to a crescendo. Just as Selena was certain they were about to be vaporized, the stars elongated into streaks of light. They had made it. As the adrenaline faded, Selena found herself laughing, a free, joyous sound she hadn't made since childhood. Kane joined in, their relief and exhilaration mingling in the close confines of the cockpit. When their laughter subsided, Kane turned to her, his eyes twinkling. "So, about that drink." Selena felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with their narrow escape. "I believe I did make a promise," she said softly, "and an Ardarian always keeps her word." As they set course for Omega Prime, Selena realized that her life had indeed changed irrevocably. But for the first time since fleeing her home, she found herself looking forward to what the future might hold. The stargazer drifted through the inky vastness of space, its hull still bearing the scars of their recent encounters with Ardarian pursuers. Inside the cockpit, Selena gazed out at the unfamiliar constellations, her emerald eyes reflecting the pinpricks of distant stars. Kane's voice broke through her reverie. "You know, princess, I've been thinking," he said, leaning back in the pilot's seat, with a casual air that belied the gravity of their situation. "We can't keep running forever. Sooner or later, your cousin's goons are going to catch up with us." Selena turned to him, arching an elegant eyebrow. "I'm well aware of our predicament. Do you have a suggestion Or are you simply stating the obvious? Kane grinned, unfazed by her sharp tone. As a matter of fact, I do. How do you feel about Earth? Earth? Selena's brow furrowed. The human homeworld? Why would we go there? Think about it. Kane leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with excitement. It's the last place anyone would look for an Ardarian princess. Plus, I know my way around. We could disappear, start fresh. No more galactic politics. No more assassins breathing down our necks. Selena considered his words, weighing the risks against the potential for a new life. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Your logic is not entirely unsound. But how would we integrate into Earth society? I'm hardly inconspicuous. Kane chuckled. Trust me, princess. Earth's got all kinds. A beautiful alien with a royal attitude? You'll fit right in some circles. I do not have an attitude, Selena huffed, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. Very well. Set a course for Earth. As the Stargazer's engines hummed to life, charting a new trajectory, Selena felt a mix of trepidation and excitement. The journey to Earth would take several weeks, even at maximum warp. It was a daunting prospect, but also an opportunity. Over the following days, Selena found herself spending more time with Kane outside of their usual duties. Their conversations, once focused solely on survival and strategy, began to take on a more personal tone. One evening, as they shared a meal of synthesized protein cubes, which Selena found utterly tasteless, but Kane insisted were not that bad, she found herself asking about his past. You mentioned you were in the Earth Alliance, she said, trying to mask her curiosity with nonchalance. What was that like? Kane's expression grew distant, a shadow passing over his features. War, he said simply. Lot of fighting, lot of dying. Not much glory, despite what the recruitment vids tell you. Selena nodded, understanding all too well the toll of conflict. On Ardaria, we're taught from birth that duty to the Empire supersedes all personal desires. I imagine it's similar for your soldiers. Kane snorted. Yeah, well, that's a load of bull if you ask me. Don't get me wrong, I served with some good people. But at the end of the day, we were just pawns in a game played by politicians who'd never seen a day of combat in their lives. His bluntness surprised Selena, but she found it refreshing. On Ardaria, such frank discussion of military matters would be considered treasonous. Is that why you left? She asked softly. Kane met her gaze, his eyes intense. Partly, but mostly I just got tired of watching good people die for bad reasons. Figured I could do more good out here, on my own terms. Selena felt a newfound respect for the human growing within her. That's admirable, she said, meaning it. Kane grinned, the somber mood lifting. Don't go getting all mushy on me now, princess. I've got a reputation to maintain. As the days passed, Selena found herself increasingly fascinated by human behavior, particularly Kane's. His casual mannerisms and irreverent humor were so at odds with the rigid etiquette she'd been raised with, yet she couldn't deny their charm. One morning, she entered the galley to find Kane humming tunelessly as he tinkered with the food synthesizer. He was shirtless, his muscled torso on full display as he worked. What in the name of the Ardarian ancestors are you doing? Selena demanded, trying to ignore the sudden warmth in her cheeks. Kane glanced up, flashing her a roguish smile. Trying to get this hunk of junk to make something resembling real coffee. A man's got needs, you know. Selena blinked, perplexed. Coffee? You would risk damaging our only source of sustenance for a beverage. Kane laughed. Oh, princess, you have no idea. Coffee isn't just a drink, it's a way of life. Here, let me show you. Over the next hour, Kane regaled her with tales of Earth's coffee culture, from Italian espressos to towering frappuccinos. Selena found herself oddly captivated by his enthusiasm for something so seemingly trivial. I must admit, she said as Kane finally coaxed a steaming cup of dark liquid from the synthesizer, I'm having difficulty understanding the appeal of this coffee. Kane's eyes twinkled. Only one way to find out. Care to try it? Selena hesitated, then nodded. She took a tentative sip of the bitter brew, her face immediately contorting in disgust. This is vile, she sputtered. Kane's laughter echoed through the ship. An acquired taste, I'll grant you. But just wait. By the time we reach Earth, I'll have you hooked. As the weeks wore on, Selena found herself looking forward to these moments of levity with Kane. She began to see beyond his rough exterior, glimpsing the intelligence and compassion that lay beneath. One night, as they sat in the cockpit watching the stars streak by, Kane turned to her with an uncharacteristically serious expression. "Can I ask you something, Selena?" he said, using her name instead of his usual princess. She nodded, intrigued by his tone. "All this stuff about your bloodline? The power to unite the galaxy? Do you really believe in it?" Selena was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. "I was raised to believe it," she said finally. "It's been the cornerstone of Ardarian politics for millennia. But now, I'm not so sure." Kane nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And if it is real, what then? You just wave your hand and suddenly everyone in the galaxy holds hands and sings Kumbaya?" Selena couldn't help but chuckle at the image. "It's not quite so simple. The legends speak of a profound connection, an ability to bridge the gaps between races and cultures. But even if it's true, I'm not sure I want that responsibility anymore." Kane reached out, his hand covering hers. The touch sent a jolt through Selena's body. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I think you'd make a hell of a galactic peacemaker. But I also think you deserve the chance to choose your own path." Their eyes met, and Selena felt something shift between them. The air in the cockpit seemed to thicken, charged with an energy she couldn't quite define. Before she could respond, an alarm blared. Kane cursed, pulling away to check the readouts. "Proximity alert. Looks like we've got company." Selena's heart raced as she saw the familiar silhouette of an Ardarian warship dropping out of warp. "How did they find us?" Kane's fingers flew over the controls. "Don't know. Don't care. Hang on tight, princess. This ride's about to get bumpy." The next hours were a blur of evasive maneuvers, near misses, and desperate improvisation. Kane's piloting skills were put to the test as he wove through asteroid fields and pushed the Stargazer's engines to their limits. Finally, with a combination of luck and skill, they managed to lose their pursuers in the plasma storms of a nearby nebula. As the adrenaline faded, Selena found herself trembling, the reality of their narrow escape sinking in. Kane appeared at her side, his face etched with concern. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" Selena nodded, unable to speak. Kane hesitated for a moment, then pulled her into a tight embrace. She stiffened at first, unused to such physical contact, but gradually relaxed into his arms. "We made it," Kane murmured into her hair. "We're okay." As they clung to each other in the aftermath of danger, something shifted between them. Selena pulled back slightly, her eyes meeting Kane's. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch in her throat. Without conscious thought, she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that started tentative, but quickly blazed into passion. All the tension, the fear, the growing attraction of the past weeks poured into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Kane grinned. "Well," he said, his voice husky, "I guess that answers the question of interspecies compatibility." Selena laughed, a free and joyous sound. "Indeed it does," she said, pulling him in for another kiss. The remainder of their journey to Earth was a whirlwind of discovery, both of each other and of the depth of their feelings. Selena marveled at the intensity of human passion, so different from the controlled courting rituals of Arteria. Kane, in turn, was captivated by Selena's combination of regal grace and newfound enthusiasm for life's simple pleasures. As they approached the Sol system, Selena felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. "What if your people don't accept me?" she asked Kane as Earth's blue orb grew larger in the view screen. Kane squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Trust me, princess. You're going to fit right in. And anyone who has a problem with you will have to answer to me." Their landing on Earth was surprisingly uneventful. Kane's connections from his military days smoothed their entry, and soon they found themselves standing on solid ground for the first time in weeks. Selena gazed around in wonder at the bustling spaceport. The sheer diversity of life forms and cultures was overwhelming after the homogeneity of Arteria. "It's chaotic," she said, a note of awe in her voice. Kane chuckled. Welcome to Earth, Princess. Come on, I've got some people I want you to meet. He led her to a modest home in a quiet suburb, explaining that his parents lived here. Selena felt a flutter of nervousness as Kane knocked on the door. It swung open to reveal a middle-aged couple, their faces lighting up at the sight of Kane. "Son!" the woman cried, pulling him into a tight hug. "We were so worried." As introductions were made, Selena found herself enveloped in the warmth of human hospitality. Kane's parents, Mary and John, welcomed her with open arms, seemingly unfazed by her alien origins. Over the next few days, Selena experienced a crash course in Earth culture, with results that were often hilarious. Her first encounter with a shower left her sputtering and indignant. "Why would anyone voluntarily stand under a torrent of water?" she demanded of an amused Kane. "It's barbaric." Coffee remained a mystery to her, though she had to admit the smell was pleasant. "I still don't understand how you can stomach this bitter concoction," she said one morning as Kane sipped his brew. "Give it time," he winked. "You'll come around." Despite her initial struggles, Selena found herself warming to life on Earth. The freedom to simply be, without the weight of galactic politics on her shoulders, was intoxicating. As weeks turned to months, Selena and Kane settled into a rhythm of domestic life. They found a small apartment, decorated with a mix of Earth trinkets and salvaged items from the Stargazer. Selena took classes at a local community college, fascinated by human history and culture. Their first Christmas together was a comedy of cultural misunderstandings. Selena was baffled by the concept of bringing a tree indoors, and even more confused by the idea of a mythical gift giver. "Let me understand this," she said as they decorated the tree. "You tell your children that an obese man in red clothing breaks into your home to leave presents, and this is considered festive?" Kane laughed so hard he nearly fell off the ladder. "When you put it like that, it does sound pretty weird. But trust me, it's magical when you're a kid." As they snuggled on the couch that night, watching the twinkling lights of the tree, Selena felt a sense of peace she'd never known before. "Thank you," she murmured to Kane. "For what?" he asked, pulling her closer. "For showing me all of this. For giving me a chance at a real life." Kane kissed her softly. "Thank you for taking a chance on a scruffy human pilot." Their wedding, held the following spring, was a joyous blend of Earth and Ardarian traditions. Selena wore a gown that combined the flowing lines of her homeworld with Earth's bridal white. Kane cleaned up nicely in a suit, though he complained good-naturedly about the tie. As they exchanged vows under a canopy of cherry blossoms, Selena marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a princess bound by duty to a woman free to love and be loved in return. And on quiet nights, as they gazed up at the stars from their back porch, Selena would sometimes think of the power she was said to possess. The ability to unite worlds, to bridge the gaps between cultures. Looking at the life she and Kane had built, she realized that perhaps she had found a way to use that power after all. Not on a galactic scale, but in the small, precious moments of a life shared in love. A year had passed since Kane and Selena began their life together on Earth. Their home, a small, cozy cottage on the outskirts of a quiet town, was filled with joy, laughter, and tranquility. In this year, Selena had grown accustomed to the earthly traditions and the rhythm of life, so distant from the strict protocols of her native Ardaria. Now her emerald eyes shone not from the weight of royal duties, but from the happiness of simple, human life. Her rounded belly was a clear sign that their life was about to change even more. She was expecting their first child, a hybrid, the result of the union of Ardarian blood and Kane's human heritage. This child was not just a symbol of new life for them, but also a bridge between worlds. Every time Selena touched her stomach, she thought about the future, about how remarkable their child would be, a carrier of two cultures, two worlds. But now as she sat in a chair on the veranda, enjoying the soft sunlight and fresh earthly air, her mind was far from diplomacy and bridges between races. All her thoughts were on the small being inside her and on Kane, who was, as always, busy with something in the garage. "Hey, princess, how are you doing?" Kane appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands with a towel. His voice always carried that casual, almost teasing tone. but she had learned to understand the hidden care behind the mask. "Better than you look," she replied, wrinkling her nose at the sight of the oil stains on his shirt. "Well, what can you do? You know it's my job. Taking apart everything that breaks and putting it back together." He smirked, stepping onto the veranda and sitting next to her. "How's our little space traveler doing?" Selena smiled, gently stroking her belly. "He or she seems very content. It's a calm day. I think the baby enjoys the peace as much as I do." Kane reached out and carefully touched her belly, his rough fingers unexpectedly tender as they moved over the rounded curve. That gesture always made her heart beat a little faster. Over the past year, she had come to know him much deeper than she ever expected, seeing not just a soldier and pilot, but a man with a kind heart and humor that helped her forget all her fears. "I still can't believe this is happening," he said quietly, looking at her belly with almost childlike wonder. "You say that every day," she laughed. "It's a bit late for surprises, Kane." He chuckled, but his eyes remained serious. I know. But every time I think about how unique our child will be, I start wondering what's ahead for us. Not just as parents, but in everything else." "You mean how our child will be a bridge between two worlds?" Selena asked carefully, noticing the shadow of worry on his face. "Yeah," he nodded, pulling his hand away. "But you know, I don't care about galactic politics and all that. I just want our child to be safe, for him or her to be happy." Selena looked at Kane, at his serious eyes and slightly furrowed brow. This was a new expression for him. So serious, so thoughtful. She knew that behind this year of peace, his fears had been lurking. The fear that their past might still catch up with them, that sooner or later, our Darian agents would come to Earth again. "Our child will be happy," she said firmly. "Here on Earth, we'll have the chance for a normal life. No intrigues, no conspiracies." Kane looked at her and nodded. "I hope so. I really want to believe that the past has left us." Her hand found his and she squeezed his palm in hers. She wanted to believe that their past was truly behind them. But somewhere deep inside, she knew that their new future might not be as peaceful as they hoped. Their child wasn't just their joy, but a symbol of a new era for all those who knew of his existence. Dear listeners, the story of Kane and Selena is more than just a tale of love and struggle. It is a reminder that true connections between people, and not just people, are built on understanding, patience, and the desire to create something greater than each of us individually. It is a story of how, despite the past, betrayal, and dangers, we can always find the strength to build a new life where only true feelings, mutual support, and a future full of hope matter. Each of us faces obstacles, doubts, and fears. But if we can open ourselves up to something new, whether it's another person, culture, or opportunity, we will discover that beyond the familiar world lies something amazing. As with Kane and Selena, true strength lies in staying true to yourself and those you love, despite the hardships. Their child, a hybrid of two worlds, is a symbol of a new era, a symbol of unity and diversity. Each of us carries pieces of different stories, cultures, and experiences within us. Let this inspire you to strive for something better, not just for yourself, but for future generations as well. Remember, the future is not merely the result of our decisions. It is the outcome of love, understanding, and the willingness to move forward without fear of change. There is room for such stories in every life. Let your story be just as remarkable as this one.